Hello. Again, this is Wine 101 on the road. I'm your host, Scott Sullivan, and today we're on the West Side Road, Vineyard Drive in Paso Robles. We have some hallowed ground here. We have some storied vineyards. Across the street, just up the road, is Tablas Creek. We have Justin. Our neighbors to the south are Opalo. This is indeed prime real estate, and I have the pleasure today of being at Brecon Estates, and we have the owners and winemakers, and I guess you do a little bit about everything. I'd like to introduce Amanda and Damien Grindley.
So yeah. Nice to meet you.
And I do feel like the chief cook and bottle washer all the time.
We do everything.
In fact, I had my hands topping barrels this morning. In fact, you know, you can still, if you probably can't see it on camera, but there is a purple stain.
Yeah, the fingers. So here we are. This is a beautiful place, and you all should get a chance in Paso Robles. If you're going to visit, this is more of a boutique winery. This is stuff sells out pretty quick here. But before we get into the wines, I'd actually like to find out a little bit about your journey, both of you independently, and then how you came together. And so I guess start with you, Amanda.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I was living in Australia, working for national parks and having a great time. I study bats and fossils. I spend a lot of time underground. And Damien came to Australia to do his winemaking degree, and he'll tell his before story in a moment. And we met caving, and from then on I started to enjoy wine and really just got educated. And Damien doesn't teach me a lot about wine. He just lets me make my own decisions, and that's been a journey. And then we decided to travel the world and make wine and explore a huge amount of caves along the way. And our kids have very strange accents because they've traveled too much. And along the way, we've also taken our pets. We've hiked many places. We've drunk a lot of amazing wine.
So you're from Australia?
I am, sorry.
What part?
I'm from Adelaide and Sydney. So I have a huge family. I have 5 brothers and sisters, and they're all incredibly proud, but they all want to stay just in Sydney, and I just want to keep on traveling. I'm like the black sheep of the family. Can't keep me down.
And you are not from Australia?
No, I'm from a small Welsh island called Anglesey. And the weather's a little different than it is here. It rains 10 times a day there. And the only people when I grew up who drank wine were the doctor, the lawyer, and the solicitor. Anyone else who drank wine was probably considered soft in the head. But strangely enough, I wandered off to university. I was actually studying horticulture and landscape design. And then following university, I kind of stumbled into the wine trade. I just took a weekend job driving a truck for a wine company. And within 3 months I was assistant manager, branch manager, and it was the sort of place where you'd have Opus 1 to taste and Chateau Lafite to taste and everything else. So being a huge international wine market, I got this great palate very, very quickly. And in England, you know, the main qualification for wine is the Master of Wine. So I did all the precursors for the Master of Wine and was just about to start the Master of Wine thing. And I looked at my hands one day and went, you know, I'm more hands-on. I'm kind of a practical guy. So I headed off to Australia to do a postgraduate qualification, a master's in winemaking. I never looked back. Loved it, you know, traveled the world. It's taken me to a lot of places. Made some great wines along the way. I often consider myself as a stealth winemaker. You know, I was the guy who'd get them their great Parker scores or whatever. But it never had my name on the label. So, you know, this is finally our gig. You know, it's you know, when we're doing things here, it's a generational thing. So we're, you know, generational planting. It's different than these big brands I've done before. So, very exciting. You know, with the caver thing really brought us to Paso. We were looking for places with that calcareous soil. Looking at limestone all the time from underground and seeing roots come into the cave, it always fascinated me, the link between the calcareous soil, which is very high in pH, and how it produces low pH, bright, balanced acid wines. And so there's quite a lot of places around the world that are on these calcareous soils. Santa Emilion is on calcareous soils. Cunawara, Côte d'Or is on most of Italy, and the Dordogne is all on limestone soils. So when we were looking around, we really wanted somewhere with that calcareous soil. And the other thing, you know, I'm spiritually Australian. I held the passport now, even though, you know, I've got this Welsh heritage. My wife's Australian, and there's a certain hospitality that goes with that. You know, you can lean in the back of somebody's pickup and, you know, lean on the fence and chew the cud. And you can do that in Paso. It's still a very friendly environment. Some other wine areas have become a bit like Dynasty, and you know, that's not something we like. We like to have people feel friendly and welcoming.
Yeah, and they certainly have with us. Now, this particular property, how long have you owned it?
So we purchased this in October 2012. The previous owner who had got it up to one of the signature wineries around here, he founded Vineyard Drive, really planted the oldest vine cab here on the west side. There's plenty of older Zin and Petit Syrah, but very little older cab. And so he passed away, and then there was a gap where the family took over, and I don't think they really quite had the passion so much. They certainly tried. They had their niche. So the building had become a little run down. So we closed and wanted to renovate and get the wines ready. And so buying it in October 12, we didn't open till March 14. The renovation really worked out for us. We literally signed up these architects, and they were a pleasure to work with. 4 weeks later, they got Smithsonian Designer of the Year. After that, I could never have afforded them and never got on their waiting list. So timing was perfect, and we've ended up winning a whole bunch of design awards for this renovation. We were up against airports in Qatar, tech company headquarters in Silicon Valley, 2 of them actually, oceanographic institutes in Hawaii, and yet it's little old us. And just to be in the running was fantastic. And we've actually ended up this year winning a couple. We got a merit award from the San Francisco Architecture Institute and some interior design awards. So it's been it's a total package, not a great wine, but you've got the architecture, the great people. That's all we say to people all the time.
And I'm particularly proud of the awards for the building. Damien just makes great wine, and I've been so lucky to wander the world and drink them with him. But I feel like this was my baby. I'm so excited and just so proud that this is something that I helped design. So happy.
And in the same way, you've got the international influence in the winemaking, you know, because I spent a lot of time in Europe, made wine in Australia, made wine here, made wine in, I even made wine for the Scandinavians. In the same way the architecture has, you know, you've got influences from Australia, you've got influences from Scandinavia where I was, and you know, my landscape design history. So it all melds together really quite well.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll take you inside so you can see some of the tasting room from the other side of these walls in just a minute. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this vineyard again. You touched on the original vines that were here were Cabernet, and they were some of the oldest vines that had been planted in this area.
Right, they're so old that they're on their own roots. It's Cabernet on Cabernet roots. Back then they weren't worried about phylloxera. There were no other vines out here. And then at the top of the hill we've got Cab Franc. And nobody plants Cab Franc on the top of a hill, but like every other vine that's planted on a hill, it produces smaller berries and fantastic fruit. And when we got here, the previous people had never done a Cab Franc program. It had just got lost in the big blend, so I kept it separately, you know, hand harvested it, little small batch ferments. And at the end of the day we went, oh, this is kind of good, we should bottle it.
Kind of amazing. And
we did, and right out the track we got all the other wineries sending people over for a fantastic Cabernet Franc. And it's the same with coming out of the track with a signature wine on the white side being Albarino. No one does that, and yet it's worked for us. We've really got a following for it.
Yep. In fact, you guys are doing something, I think it's the first time, isn't it, coming up? You're going to be doing, hosting an international Albarino, like, tasting or comparative?
Right, absolutely. It's actually on Monday, so we're getting pretty close now. And we had so much success with our Albarino, and a few other people were getting success around here, and the Central Coast has probably easily 50% or not more of the Albarino plantings in California. So we thought we'd get a few of the handful of the producers together and do a little tasting for the public and really try and, you know, the trade and the winemakers are really sold on it, but the communication hasn't really got through to the customer yet. So we thought we'd have a little summit, and lo and behold, there's 24 wineries. Wow. We had no idea that many wineries had Albarino, and probably 30 wines being poured. So it's going to be quite the event, I think. And we're having a seminar where some of the people who planted the original plantings are going to be here. They know more about Albarino in the Central Coast than I do. And some of the other people who are going to be here are from Portugal and northern Spain, so they can tell you the history of the grape over there. I give more of the international flair with the history in Australia and some of the more recent winemaking innovations. So it's going to be quite an exciting event.
Now, we were here last year and I had the Albarino, and I got to tell you, it is very typical of what I consider a top-notch Albarino from Europe. It's delicious, and yet this year they've stepped it up even more. You did a second style. Tell me about that one.
So that started as an experiment.
Apparently I was drinking too much.
So back in France, an old technique is to use acacia wood for Sauvignon Blanc and Viognier. And it gives you structure to the wine and maybe a white peach floral character without the toastiness and the vanilla. So we thought, well, we'll throw a couple of these barrels in just to give it a try. And then we thought about it and went, well, you know, our Albarino program, you know, it's really quick. So we have the barrels empty for 5 months of the year. And that's not good with an acacia barrel because they dry out more quickly than oak and they can fall apart. So what we've done is take a neutral oak barrel and replace the heads with new
oh, wow.
acacia. And so the brand is actually called True Acacia Head. And it really works for us. We get this superstructure for the wine. It's really a red drinker's white, and yet we're getting these white peach characters on top of the natural citrus you get with Albarino. And so what started as an experiment very, very rapidly evolved into a signature wine for us.
Very cool. This is fantastic. We're going to go ahead and move inside so that we can see the other side of what the visitors are going to be able to appreciate. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello. So now we're inside the tasting room of Brecon Estates. I'm here with Amanda and Damien Grindley. They are the owners, the winemakers, and pretty much they do it all. And one thing why I'm mentioning this is the name Brecon Estates. Where did that come from?
Everyone's looking at me. I suppose I better mention that one. So it was a great name because it tied in a lot of things for us. Brecon comes from the Brecon Beacons National Park in South Wales, and it tied in the calcareous soil because it's underlain by limestone, and it also tied in our caving history because I mapped and discovered a lot of those caves. So that was part of it. Also tied in my Welsh heritage. I spent a lot of time in the Brecon Beacons, and most importantly, it was a short, strong name that hadn't been trademarked over here, because every great name you think of has been trademarked.
Oh yeah, it was a journey.
And so it really works for us. You know, a lot of people come in thinking, Brecon, but in actual fact it's Brecon, and even though Welsh is Gaelic, there is no such word in French. So Brecon is it, and it's really worked for us.
Yeah, it's not that fancy. It's not Brecon. No, Brecon.
It's very nice. Speaking of fancy here, I'm enjoying a glass of Albarino while we talk. I'd like to talk about this a little bit. So what's the style? How do you pick? How do you harvest? What techniques are you using to bring? So this is a phenomenal Albarino.
Well, I don't want to give my secrets away, but you know, in northern Spain and northern Spain and northern Portugal, the best Albarinos are grown down by the coast. And a lot of people have planted a little bit of Albarino around Paso, but I take mine right like one hill in, if you like, from the gorgeous beaches we have down here. And what happens when you do that is you need to give it a long hang time, not for the flavors, not for the color, and not for the sugar, to get the acids to come in balance, because it's a variety that gives these naturally bright acids in often where it's planted in a high desert. And so when you put it in a cool climate, it has these very, very aggressive acids, and you have to wait and wait and wait for them to come into balance. And so we're harvesting this in October. And because they get the fogs down there, you know, the fruit hasn't got dried out or sunburnt. And then we just do simple, basic winemaking, really cold, slow ferments to capture all those aromatics. And then we siphon off all the light, fluffy lees, put those in barrel, and stir them. And it's like champagne. The lees eventually break down. It's called a Sur-Lise technique. And they give it that sort of toasty, biscuity flavour that champagne has, and really fills out the mid-palate. So it's all about being right in the vineyard, very cold, fermented, the majority of the fruit, and then the lees, or the lees portion is lees stirred to get that breakdown effect. This is the first time I've done it pure. In the past, I've put a touch of Viognier in there, or a touch of something else, just to help fill out that mid-palate. This year, didn't feel I needed to, and this is 100% pure. In actual fact, I put 10% of another Albarino in there to give it a little bit of citrus back.
Very cool. No, it's tremendous. So do you have a particular style? Like, I'm a Rhone guy, or I'm being in Paso, there's a lot of warm weather. Even though they have cool evenings, you tend to get a lot of the Rhone or the hotter weather grapes. But you can grow just about anything here. What's your style? What are you doing?
Right. So I take a longer term view of this. You know, in 100 years' time, what's Paso going to be named for? And you know, there are some great old world traditions, whether it's Bordeaux or is it Spain or it's or the Rhone. And when you want to be in Paso in 100 years' time, you want to be known for things that do well in Paso. So we basically cream off the varieties that can be world class around here. That means we're not got all our feet in one camp or the other. So we'll cream off the best of Bordeaux, the best of Rhone, a few things like Albarino, maybe some Tempranillo, and then do blends thereof. So we're taking a longer term view. It's a hard message to get across, you know, what are you? But we're really about the best of Paso, the things that we've found world-class microclimates for around here. Whether it be the whole estate here is Bordeaux, and you know, we think, you know, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot, Malbec, some of those blenders elsewhere can be world-class here. But it's also interesting to see what we don't do. So you won't see Sauvignon Blanc here. You maybe won't see Merlot. I haven't found a world-class Merlot yet. Other people may have them. We don't. We're not doing a Chardonnay. But the varieties that we do are exceptional for this area, and certainly stand on their own on an international competition or an international level.
Yeah, I find often people come into the taste room and they're just looking for just a Bordeaux or just a Rhone. And so many people say, we're not going to drink whites, we don't like whites. And most of the time, nearly 99% of the time, I can talk people into trying this Albarino. And 10 times out of 10, they'll buy a bottle of Albarino.
It's almost like a red drinker's white.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I tell you, I know that's true because it's always sold out when we try to pick some up. So yeah, kudos to you for that. Now, some of the other varietals that you have in the tasting room today, one in particular that sells out is a Mourvèdre. What can you tell me about that one?
And that you know, proves my point to be exactly. Mourvèdre is generally a blender elsewhere. It adds a lot of fat and richness to a blend, and you know, it's just one of those varieties in the Rhone. But in Paso, you'll find a few spots, and Carla Canyon is where we source most of ours from, where it can be world class. You can bottle it on its own, and in some other places, Australia as well, you'll see it as Matura. We've had a lot of success with it. It's been chosen for a number of times as the Rhone Rangers to put out at their varietal tastings, and we've been very happy with it. It consistently scores in the mid-90s, and so that's one of the things. And so it's an eclectic mix, but everything that is here is it's world-class vineyards basically.
Very cool. Now, I do jump around, as you guys know, if you've seen any other episodes, and so I'm backpedaling here to go to the Cabernet because there's a facet or a feature that I'm very intrigued by, and that is the irrigation protocols, or what do you do on those old cab vines?
So since we took over, we've been trying to go dry grown on the cab, but it takes time to train those roots to go deeper and deeper and deeper in search of water. So it's a 4 or 5 year process, and then of course we've been in 4 or 5 years of drought. So, you know, pretty much what we got here, we turned the water off, and we really started to see the benefits very quickly in smaller berries, more intense flavors. We did get to the stage after 2 or 3 years drought where we put a little water on in the winter just to make sure that there's enough canopy to ripen the fruit and it doesn't get too sunburnt. But every year it's less and less and less, and as soon as we get some rain again, I'm sure that'll be it. So we're going in a dry grown direction. It gives much brighter acids, much smaller berries. All the flavour and colour tends to be in the skins. So if you've got a small berry and tiny amount of pulp, what's called the juice to skin ratio, you generally get better flavours and brighter, more balanced acidities. So we're certainly moving in that direction, and a lot of the fruit we source, and I only have the one microclimate here and the one hilltop, so this estate's all Bordeaux, some really exciting clones we've planted along with the old stuff. But you can stand at the top of the hill and you can see like 10 or 12 hills around here, and I've tried to go run around and contract most of that fruit. So it's all about here. You know, a lot of these wines are within a stone's throw right here, but as you say, we've got great neighbours. So that is probably the dry grown story. Not everything we do is dry grown, but a large proportion of it is. We've just started doing, it's not in bottle yet, it's from the last vintage, but we have a dry grown Zin, we have a dry grown Petit Syrah in the mix, and even a little bit of dry grown Cab in the mix as well. So
yeah, we're not after volume, we're after quality, and that really is reflected in the fact that we just want to dry grow everything. And a very similar, story what's happening in California with drought. It's been happening in Australia for 20 years, and dry grown is the way to go.
That does bring up an interesting point. Having been in Australia for making wine for 5 or 6 years prior to this, and they were in a 10-year drought. Everyone thinks that drought years, more intense flavours and everything else. Actually, there's more to it than that, and you get more of everything. You get more flavour, more colour, more sugar. The acids tend to be brighter and more aggressive because it's an earlier pick, but the tannins tend to be more intense too. So you do have to adapt your winemaking to maybe press off a little earlier, so you're not getting as much tannin, but you're still getting the fruit extraction and the colour extraction. Just to dial back those tannins so everything's in balance, because I say in a drought you generally get more of everything, and not necessarily want more of everything. You want more colour, more flavour. So that's an interesting part of that, and I think that helped working in Australia before. You really got to handle a drought year.
When I look around, I notice there's a lot of vegetation here, and this is the California Golden Hills and rolling oak trees, even some walnut orchards and stuff. But there's a lot of ground cover plants and such. Do you guys decide on the ground cover between the rows? Do you try to focus on having specific ones to help, or do you just let it be the terroir that this area has given you?
So we're deceptively close to the ocean. You're right. It is very green here. This is a drought year. We still got 22 inches of rain, so over the winter. A lot of people plough their fields. We've just actually let the native California grasses and things and the fauna grow in the vine rows. Sure, we mow it to keep the humidity down and keep the competition with the vines down. But that's all part of that sustainable type farming that we're all trying to practice. So yes, you'll see a lot of grass down the middle of it, but it's not a cover crop. It's just naturally there.
And one day I'll have sheep. He'll let me have sheep. We have the dog.
You've got to have sheep. They do have a dog. That would be perfect. That would be great. So now that we're in here, tell me a little bit about the inside space. What was the theme? What were you thinking?
I really wanted something that anyone could come in. So it doesn't matter if you've come from an amazing area in Los Angeles, or you're the farmer down the road who wants to come in and enjoy a nice glass of wine. So everything had to be really strong, earthy components. I love recycling stuff. In Australia we have a lot of rammed earth, so that is an example here. It also looks like an amazing cave wall, so I can talk about that. And people love to hear the story about everything that's going on, not just about the wine. The wine is the focus. And yeah, I I think I did a great job.
Yeah. If you can see the texture in this, the wall behind the artwork is actually, it's made of soil, and it's very cool. The texture is just amazing. I still am overwhelmed with these people being in caves beneath vineyards and actually being able to see what we all see from above ground, under the ground, and see how the roots are progressing or how they're breaking down and going. Another thing they do, if you go online and look up Brecon Estates, you'll find that they do different food gatherings. We've been here before where they had some barbecue going on, and they do all kinds of different events here. So you should definitely take some time, look them up, do some research, and find what we consider a hidden gem here, and only going up. And with that comment, I would like to ask you to pick one of your wines and pair it with a food.
Oh, can I go first?
Absolutely.
The Albarino.
Good choice.
It's got these really strong acids, really beautiful on the mid palate, and it goes incredibly well with scallops. You can also have it with a curry. You can also have it with Thai food. It is that much of a... This is finally the wine that you can have with spicy food. It goes with wasabi. It's amazing. I've tried it with everything.
Very good. I think she stole your thunder on the curry.
Sorry.
I think I'm going to go Cab Franc. And Cab Franc, I think, is having a little bit of a renaissance. You know, you don't need a huge, big Cabernet Sauvignon or some big monster Zin to go with your steak in the summer or your barbecue. In the summer, you need something a little more refined, a little lighter, but still has that structure and things. So with this beautiful time of year we're filming out here, I would probably want to pull a Cabernet Franc to go with my steak in the summer.
There you go. Well, I want to thank you both.
Thanks.
Amanda.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Very much, Damien. This is Scott Sullivan, and we want to thank you all for watching the show. If you want to see other episodes, you can stream them live at www.prescottmediacenter.com. That will roll on the credits after the show. And if you're in Paso, you don't know, you just may see us down the road.
Cheers.